and other recovery personnel who have trained for several years for this recovery process. At this hour, some 41 minutes following splashdown, the vehicle has been powered down. There's no hazardous gas emanating from the vehicle. That's why the first team of recovery personnel has been able to pull alongside Integrity. And the reports continue to come in that the 4 astronauts are in excellent shape. Yes. This is Mission Control Houston, continuing to watch the initiation of the recovery of Integrity's astronauts. One by one, they'll be brought out of the spacecraft onto a large inflatable raft just a short time from now. In the meantime, we can go back to the USS John P. Murtha, where my colleague Megan Cruz is standing by to provide her situation report. Megan, can you hear us?
Hey, Rob. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Yeah, we're back here on the bow of the recovery ship where there are still plenty of people peering out into the water. We are not very far from the action everyone is seeing on their screen now. The Orion spacecraft, Integrity, in the ocean, surrounded by a number of recovery boats. As Rob has been saying, in those recovery boats, NASA and Navy personnel specifically trained to get the astronauts out of Orion. In some of our wide shots, you can probably see that there are 6 boats out in the water. More than 40 people out in the water right now on those boats. first order of business is to set up the front porch and the stabilization collar. You might also hear it referred to as a stab collar. Basically just to make sure that Orion stays upright, doesn't sway in the water too much, again, to make it easier for recovery forces to get the astronauts out. Again, we splashed down to the Pacific Ocean just after 5 p.m. Pacific time here. It's a requirement by NASA to be able to get the crew out of Orion within 2 hours of splashdown. So doing great on time so far. Plenty of time. No rush either. I was speaking to NASA flight surgeon Rick Schuring earlier in this broadcast, and he said to me, no rush to get the crew out. Just want to make sure that they're feeling good. And whenever they're ready to take their step out of Orion and onto that large raft, the front porch, folks will be ready. As there are mission audio loops in mission control in Houston, there is a mission audio loop here on the ship, and it was just reported out that the side hatch is open. Side hatch of integrity is open. You're getting these beautiful shots from our aerial assets. The ship itself, where I'm on, just 3,000 yards away. Again, plenty of people on the boat here, glued to the side closest to where they can see all this action. And again, with just 3,000 yards separating us, great views from the bow here. You can see now that side hatch is open. One of the Navy personnel is about to get inside there. They go. In total, 4 will go into Orion. So it'll be a little bit of a tight squeeze, but the goal is to have a recovery personnel with each astronaut assessing them. Boat's getting closer now. Again, that one that's right up against Orion, those are the divers that will go in to the spacecraft to check on each of the astronauts. These other boats will begin doing a number of things, putting on that stabilization collar onto Orion, building that front porch. Eventually, they will retrieve the parachutes, as well as tow Orion back to the well deck of the recovery ship here. And so as we wait for the Navy and NASA personnel to get their assessment of the crew inside of Orion, why don't we toss it back to Rob for an update?
Yeah, thank you, Megan. Here in Mission Control, Flight Director Rick Henfling and the entry team of flight controllers still on duty. The vehicle has been powered down for some time now. There are no hazardous gases emanating from Integrity. That, of course, allowed the recovery personnel to approach the vehicle and then open the hatch to begin the initial medical assessment of the crew, as you just indicated. Now we're standing by for the erection of that inflatable raft, the front porch, alongside of the vehicle that will enable the crew to be extracted one by one onto the raft, have a moment or two to get their land legs back before they're hoisted into two hovering Navy helicopters, 2 crew members for each helicopter, for a short flight back to the deck of the USS John P. Murtha. All of Integrity's systems operated flawlessly throughout the course of the approach to the Earth, the entry into the Earth's atmosphere, and all of the key milestones that followed in this high-speed return to Earth for Integrity, a mission that spanned more than 694,000 miles from the vehicle's launch from the Kennedy Space Center atop the Space Launch System back on April 1st. As we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, the last time that the Apollo program saw a splashdown in the Pacific was Apollo 17 back on December 19th, 1972. So for the first time in some 53 and a half years, we have reenacted that with the arrival of Integrity's astronauts as they flew around the moon in that historic lunar flyby that began with a trans-lunar injection burn that took them out of Earth orbit following 24 hours of a high Earth orbit trajectory. The high Earth orbit trajectory enabled flight controllers here to have a full 24 hours to evaluate the systems on Integrity and the condition of the crew before they would commit to flying to the moon. The erection of the inflatable life raft, known as the front porch, to be erected alongside the spacecraft for the extraction of the crew. Let's play for you an interview that my colleague Megan Cruz conducted on the USS John P. Murtha with Navy diver First Class David McMahon that explains how this process is unfolding.
Okay, Davey, so you and some of your team, one last look over of the stabilization collar, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what is this stabilization collar?
This is what's going to stabilize the capsule out there in the ocean. We don't know how good the weather or the waves will be that day, so this will help prevent any unnecessary occurrences from happening, stabilizing the capsule and the astronauts inside.
So basically this is a float that will go around Orion. I'm assuming that what they're doing right now, these are the lines that will attach the collar onto Orion?
That is correct.
And so what are they doing here?
So we've got the lower line that will secure the inflation device before we inflate it. That gives us the go-ahead that it's secure in its place, and then we'll inflate it, and then once that is done, we'll undo all the carabiners and get this orange line on top tied in the same fashion, and then this will be secured to the capsule, and the astronauts can safely take their first steps out of the capsule onto the front porch.
Okay, and how long will it take them to set up the stabilization collar?
We should definitely be able to handle this in under 10 minutes.
Okay, wow. And then you just mentioned the front porch. So basically after they set up this stabilization collar, then they set up what's called the front porch here.
That's correct.
Okay, and what's the front porch?
Front porch is basically a bigger waiting room for the astronauts to sit in while we wait for the helicopters to show up and grab them.
Okay, so the medical team that was inside with the crew, they're going to help them out and onto the front porch?
That is correct.
And then what happens here?
We have higher trained medical personnel also on board the front porch that will give them lookovers and just make sure they're okay while we wait for the helicopters to show up.
Okay. How does it feel, I mean, your team, you, to be part of a mission that's returning astronauts from the moon in more than 50 years?
We all feel extremely honored to be a part of this, as well as a bigger mission for the Navy and joining up with NASA to do great things.
And do you feel like you and your team are ready?
Yes, very ready.
Cool. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Once again, the recovery operations are continuing out in the Pacific. We shortly should see that life raft, the front porch, erected alongside the side hatch of the vehicle. A number of flight controllers have come into the flight control room to receive congratulations from Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling, but we're going to stick with our operations out in the Pacific as we await the extraction of the 4 crew members who are reported to be in excellent condition.
Now that front porch looks like it's nearly fully inflated as well. You can see a much larger surface area. And so once the crew get out of Orion, they can stretch their legs a little bit on this front porch, get some fresh air. Enjoy this beautiful day here on their home planet. It appears teams now are about to connect the front porch to the stabilization collar. At that point, when both are secure, we should soon see astronauts come out of Orion. these views you see also being fed to the Landing Force Operations Center here on the ship. Of course, it is very important for our recovery teams leading the mission to have all the views that you're seeing as well. Again, listening to their communication loop here on the ship. Very quiet, which is a good thing. It means things are going pretty nominally, meaning as expected. One of the personnel on the front porch, it looks like they are now getting ready to deploy what they call the Air Rescue Vest, ARV. And so this is the harness that each crew member will get into in order to be hoisted into the helicopters. Again, those helicopters hovering just about 40 feet above the front porch when they're ready to pick up each crew member.
This is Mission Control Houston. Behind me, a fairly raucous scene as hundreds of flight controllers have poured into the flight control room here. This is reminiscent of the scene after the final shuttle mission of STS-135, although that was the end of a program. This is only the beginning of a program with the textbook splashdown of Integrity and its 4 astronauts. Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling invited all of these flight controllers who have contributed to this mission to enter the flight control room to have an opportunity to receive well wishes and to share the mutual glow that exists in the wake of a textbook mission for Integrity. On the front screen here in Mission Control, a sign that says "Welcome Home Integrity, taking humanity back to the moon, going further, and returning safely to Earth." So all of that jubilation, part of the post-splashdown activities, even as we await the crew being extracted from the vehicle to be hoisted onto Navy helicopters for the trip back to the USS John P. Murtha. Once again here in Mission Control, this view of the Artemis Flight Control Room, known as the White Flight Control Room. This is the old shuttle flight control room, and now is the home of Artemis missions to the moon and beyond. Once again, quite a few flight controllers were invited in by Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling to share in the jubilation following the successful splashdown of Integrity. That splashdown occurring an hour and 22 minutes ago, as we stand by for the completion of the extraction of the crew, and ultimately they're hoisting onto Navy helicopters for a short flight back to the USS John P. Murtha. Splashdown occurred at 7:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Central Time. I had an opportunity to talk to the head of Flight Dynamics, Jeff Birch, a moment or two ago. He said the trajectory of Integrity coming through the Earth's atmosphere was so precise. Jubilation here in the flight control room. The first crew member is out of Integrity. We are expecting the other crew members momentarily to be extracted. We now have 2 crew members out. Two crew members out, 2 to go. We're about 1 hour from sunset out in the Pacific. Everything continues to go well. Integrity's systems function perfectly during its entry back to Earth. And Reed Wiseman, the commander who will be last out of the vehicle, reported that all the crew members were feeling very well. Crew member number 3 now out. And now standing by for the commander, Reed Wiseman, who will be last out of his ship. Bobbing in the Pacific under almost ideal conditions, Integrity spanned 694,000 miles during its journey from launch to splashdown. And we now have Reed Wiseman out of the vehicle, all 4 crew members now out of Integrity. Once again, all 4 crew members now on the front porch, and the procedure to begin hoisting them up to these 2 Navy helicopters hovering overhead will begin shortly. This is Mission Control Houston. The mission is over, but the melody lingers on as jubilation continues here in the flight control room. We should be expecting NASA's Associate Administrator, Amit Kshatriya, to be joining us shortly for a short interview while the recovery operations continue out in the Pacific. So we'll stand by for that. And then we'll turn it back over to Megan Cruz aboard the USS John P. Murtha. This is Mission Control Houston here in the Artemis Flight Control Room. A number of flight controllers basking in the glory of the successful end of this mission that carried 4 astronauts around the moon on a lunar flyby, and the first test flight of Orion with crew members on board. Splashdown occurring an hour and 32 minutes ago after a flawless descent back into the Earth's atmosphere for the vehicle. Its 4 crew members in good shape, simply enjoying their time right now on the front porch, as it were, the inflatable raft alongside of their Integrity spacecraft. We're expecting Amit Kshatriya, the NASA Associate Administrator, to join us here momentarily for a brief interview before we turn it back over to Megan Cruz aboard the USS John P. Murtha, the recovery ship. This is Mission Control Houston. We're about an hour and 34 minutes since the textbook splashdown of integrity in the Pacific to bring home our astronauts. And with us now is Amit Kshatriya, the NASA Associate Administrator. Amit, a little bit of history made tonight, a little bit of history made over the past few weeks. Your thoughts as this team here basks in the glow of what they just accomplished?
Yeah, Rob, we're here in the control center, and it's kind of overrun with jubilant folks from the Mission Control Houston, as well as engineering, and folks that just want to be here, part of it, as we watch our crew get extracted from the vehicle. And my thought is always about these teams, the team that's in the water right now pulling the crew out, the team here in Houston that worked so hard over the last 10 days, no sleep to get this done. We still have some work to do to get the crew to the med bay here on the ship. They all look great coming out, so we're